You may now open the folders in front of you. Codename, Thunderball.
Welcome back to Ranked. I'm Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
I'm Scott. I'm Nathan.
Before we go any further, if you've watched our previous episodes, you're your first timer, look down below, hit that subscribe button. We like Bond, and if you like Bond and you want to follow along with this, we are trying to come up with the best, most objective list of ranking the Bond films, top to bottom, something that for all time, people can look at and be like, yes, this is the most perfect ranking of Bond movies. Taking personal bias out of it. I took a big bite last week where I think From Russia with Love is the shit. The fellas stepped in and were like, From Russia with Love is awesome, but for these reasons, Goldfinger is just a little bit better. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to come up with the most perfect ranked list of the Bond films. Tonight we're doing Thunderball. Thunderball once again pits Bond James Bond against Spectre, the evil organization responsible for the events of Dr. No and From Russia with Love. The organization makes good on the extortion portion of their name when they steal an atomic bomb from NATO and threaten to destroy a major Western city if the NATO governments refuse to hand over a ton of money. When the entirety of MI6 is tasked with finding the bomb, Bond follows a lead to Nassau, where he has a run-in with Emilio Largo, number 2 of Spectre, and the man responsible for the crime. Going to our oddly aquatic buddy, McCurdy, what do you have for us on the historical end of things?
I didn't think that gag was going to last long enough. Holy
Just leave it on the whole time.
No.
You should have done this whole thing from a pool. Just
should have. That would have been
pool.
great. This is so gentlemen, of course, this is when things get aquatic and we do lots of underwater visuals and all this stuff.
Was that a combo of iconic and aquatic? Aquatic?
Aquatic.
Did you mean to do that?
We should say the aquatic episode of the Bond franchise, Thunderball.
Yeah, from here on, if you utter the word iconic, you drink.
All right, kids, let's get into it. So typically, we get into all the cast and crew, behind the scenes stories, but today I'm going to set all that aside and we're going to deep dive in, see what I did there, into the behind the scenes tale that is the legal battle over Thunderball. So let's begin. So we set our story way back to 1958, and at this point, Ian Fleming has made a handful of the Bond novels. Casino Royale has been adapted for television. He's doing fairly well. He's doing very well for himself. And then one of Fleming's friends comes to him and says, hey, you know what would be great? What if there was a James Bond movie? Fleming, of course, says, by Jove, it would be great. Pip, pip, let's do it. So, of course, him and his friends get together. They start coming up with ideas for a Bond screenplay. And he's quickly introduced to a man who will be maybe the antagonist of all of the Bond franchise, or maybe his own hero in his own story from a certain point of view. And that man is Kevin McClory.
He's a Spectre on the entire franchise.
Yes, I thought I saw a spectre at your shoulder.
McClory, he was an Irish writer and director. He's made documentaries, he made some films. He wasn't a big deal. Like, this guy was, just some average filmmaker. This guy wasn't by any means Steven Spielberg. So him, Ian Fleming, and then he introduced a screenplay writer named Jack Whittingham. The three of them came together and they started coming up with all these ideas, these outlines and stuff. But why is this story so important? Because it sounds like I'm going on about some stupid legal battle. Well, it's because they came up with Spectre and Ernest Blofeld, which, as you guys know, watching these films, are two big important parts of the Bond franchise. And they are both introduced in this book, or I should say the screenplay. So they come up with a screenplay. The screenplay's title is Longitude 78 West. And of course, Fleming's like, that title sucks. So what is the new title? The new title is Thunderball.
Much
take
better.
that as much better. Yeah. But take that as much as you will. But then Fleming makes a fatal flaw when it comes to this whole screenplay business. Instead of it becoming a movie, it doesn't become a movie right away, probably because of financing and all sorts of other reasons. He takes his screenplay and he adapts it into a novel, and he titles it Thunderball by Ian Fleming. And he gives a manuscript to his buddies. Say, here, Jack, here, Kevin, here's the manuscript to the new novel I'm going to write. It's called Thunderball. You guys should check it out, see what you think. And of course, they're like, what the dude? The three of us came up with this idea. You're putting your name on this? Like, the three of us came up with this idea. You can't just, take our ideas and put it in a book and just say, hey, that's that, and make a bunch of money off of it. So quickly, of course, they sue, and they try to prevent the book from being published. And of course, the book does get published anyway, but the legal proceedings still are ongoing. And so much so, now it's kind of like 1960, 1961. Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman are looking to make the Bond franchise. And Dr. No, we talked about, they wanted to do this novel first, and they couldn't, so they ended up doing Dr. No because of the legal battle that was going on. So again, this thing keeps coming up, and it keeps causing problems for Eon Productions.
As we talked about last week, it literally killed Ian Fleming.
Yeah, so a lot of the stress that was due to this, I mean, of course, Ian Fleming was an avid smoker, and we talked about that, and, he drank a lot and all that, but because of the stress due to these legal proceedings that were going on well into 1964, from the stress of it, he had a heart attack and all this stuff, and he passed away. But what ended up happening, they settled out of court. Fleming got the rights to the novel. And then Kevin McClory, and I believe Jack Winningham, but it really just says Kevin McClory got the rights to the movie rights. So this is a problem for Saltzman and Broccoli now, because now they're like, oh shit, this guy has the rights to one of the novels. He could literally just take the film rights, go to a competing studio, and say, hey, that James Bond property, I have the rights to this book. We can make another James Bond and, make a shit ton of money off of it. So they didn't want that to happen. So what they decided to do, they made a deal with them. They said, look, we'll bring you on. You'll be the producer on this movie.
Did he actually do anything? Did McClory do any producing?
When I read into it, it seemed like he did a lot of helping with the location scouting and everything else. So it wasn't like he was just somebody who's like, I did all this stuff. I have the rights to this movie.
Put my name on that? Thanks.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. I mean, he was still a filmmaker, and he still produced this film with Broccoli and Saltzman. But, Saltzman and Broccoli weren't like, oh, God, we got to deal with this dude. It's another person in the mix when they're already like a team. But the big deal about this whole thing is that in the clause for the agreement, it says, okay, you can make another Thunderball in 10 years. So after this movie comes out, we'll let you make another movie in 10 years. And really, that leaves it off for a story from another time. But because of these legal proceedings, for a lot of different reasons, this kind of comes back and haunts the franchise in later installments in the Eon Productions.
First off, I just want to throw in a little round of applause for Sean Connery, who finally stepped up and did his own goddamn turn and shoot in the gun barrel. So I just want to...
There we go.
Yeah.
Good job, Sean.
I didn't even notice.
You did it. Even with Goldfinger, it was the stunt double guy who did the first 3 films, and now finally it's Sean. But the odd thing is that Sean's turn and shoot is just like a little weird. It's like he can't hold his balance exactly, But at least he finally stepped up to the plate and did it himself. This would normally be the part where I ask for an official proposition for Thunderball. I'm going to throw my own hat in the ring because I want to somewhat restate the minutes from last week. Last week was like our first fun argument time. We actually had 2 movies that it could have been either or, and we ultimately settled on Goldfinger for several reasons. Go watch that episode if you haven't seen it. The discussion came down to the spectrum that Bond lives on. Serious and gritty, and then fun and goofy, and they all fall somewhere in that spectrum. So ultimately, we put Goldfinger at the top, From Russia with Love at number 2, and Dr. No at number 3. What I'm going to submit is that Thunderball has nothing on Goldfinger. It has nothing on From Russia with Love. I think where the discussion last week was Goldfinger versus From Russia with Love, and we barely even talked about Dr. No because it was just understood it was at the bottom. Even though it's a fabulous movie, it's still at the bottom. I'm going to submit Thunderball versus Dr. No fighting for the bottom of the list. And I'm going to propose that we put Thunderball at the bottom.
Ooh.
Do I have a second on that?
I disagree.
Here's
And
the
I'm
thing.
okay with...
I'm gonna agree with Charlie.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
I'm somewhere in the middle. I agree with the first proposition that these two battle it out.
I do agree with that.
I'm
I
not
just
sure.
think
So-
I'm not sure I fully agree. It's at the bottom yet.
So we are at least understanding we're not fighting. Last week was fighting for the top position. This week, fighting for the bottom. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Dr. No has less stupid shit. It may not be as big. It may not have the impressive underwater visuals and all that. But regardless, I think it makes better decisions where Thunderball has a lot of stuff that if you don't think about it, it works. But if you think about it and you nitpick it, the movie has a lot of stupid cutting of corners and poor decision making in terms of movie logic. And for those reasons, that compels me to put Thunderball at the bottom of the list.
Personally, for me, I think it's a little bit better than Dr. No, but I don't disagree with you. So let me go through some of what, when I'm watching the movie, maybe you guys noticed this too, but I do agree, Charlie, that this movie has a lot of plot convenience. And I don't know if it's from the scripting stage or if it was from the book stage or where it came in. So the first one I can buy at least, because I'm like, okay, it's the beginning of the movie, but when you do it multiple times, that's when it kind of like, okay, now you're breaking the fourth wall for me. So the first one's Bond just so happens to be at the same spa that Angelo's at. That just seems a little convenient, but I can buy it. I can be like, okay.
Yeah, so Angelo is the guy who is hired by Spectre, specifically Count Lippy. Angelo takes on the face and persona of Francois Derval, who is a pilot for NATO. They do a little body double thing so they can swap in their man Angelo for Derval. They kill Derval, and then Angelo goes off on this mission to steal the nukes. This just so happens to be right after Bond kills number 6 of Spectre.
Yes.
I regret to inform you all of the death of Spectre number 6. Colonel Jacques Bouvard was killed by an unknown assassin.
So then they bring in everybody, all the 00 agents are brought in. All of the United Kingdom's Secret Service is on high alert.
It is very cool and unprecedented that you have all of the 00s lined up, literally like the 9 rings for the men, blah, blah, blah.
And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men who above all else desire
Lucy.
We never see any of them. We just see their backs. But it's understood that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and Bond walks over to seat number 7 and sits down. That's really cool and shows that this is movie number 4 that has a bigger budget.
This is why it's better. It's got
Better briefing
more
scene.
agents.
Better. More agents is better. Yeah.
Scott, you
Higher
say
numbers.
it, please. More agents.
More numbers, bigger screen on wall, giant contraption carpet.
Goldfinger has the better plot. It has a better plot, better villain, better co-villain, better car, better cube.
I want to hear
Let me add
why,
another
though.
point.
I want to fucking hear specifically why it's better.
Rush for love. It has a better overall plot, better villain.
That means, Scott, I'm saying that means nothing to me. I want you to tell me why. It had a better overall
Let
plot.
me talk.
It means nothing.
Then let me talk.
You see,
Stupid dickhead.
if you were to analyze the
I'm gonna
movie
drive
as
up
a
to Michigan
whole,
and kill this.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about that for a second. This is where the second big plot convenience comes in play. So Bond gets a folder, and you notice it says On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which will be a later film. But I love that that is on there. So he opens the folder up. They say, open your folders up. He looks through all the files. It's all the pilots, everything you need to know about the mission of the Vulcan, which was the plane that goes missing. He goes and finds a photo. Oh my God, look. He sees a photo of Angelo with another girl who we will know as the main Bond girl, and her name goes by Domino. And he sees that, and he goes,
Well, there was a photograph of that man in this dossier you gave us. His name is Derval. Well, I saw him last night at Shrublands, but he was dead.
huh, I saw this man last night. He died. And then he sees his sister, and it's taken in Nassau. The bombs must be in Nassau.
Who is this girl?
Derval's sister, sir.
Do you know where she is now?
Nassau.
Again, James Bond, super spy, just so happens to be at a spa after killing number 6 of Spectre to meet another agent of Spectre who is plotting a face swap at that spa, who then commits the bomb stealing thing. And then Bond happens to be there to catch on to all of this.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, so convenient.
Almost as if...
As if it was intended.
Because originally he's told, M says, you're going to go to Station C, which is in Canada, and this is going to be your liaison, all this stuff.
Are the ladies hot in Canada? Canada.
He's like, no, I like this lady.
I'd rather go to Nassau. I'm not going to fucking Canada. Are you fucking kidding me, Em? Has Bond ever gone to Canada in his life? I don't think so. He goes everywhere but Canada in every one of these movies.
Obianasa, NATO training flight. Air traffic flashed as they lost it on radar, and we haven't been able to pick it up anywhere.
Was she losing altitude when she went off the screen?
Yes, sir, rapidly.
They already know where the path of the plane went, right? So in a modern movie, they would have been like, well, we know the plane was here. It stopped here. Like, you guys have all seen Lost, you know? Like, they know where the plane could have crashed. So you would think that maybe the first thing they thought is, oh, maybe we should look near the Bahamas to go find this. But no, it's because Bond sees a picture of the guy who died and was like, wait, he has a hot sister. Maybe the hot sister knows something.
Yeah.
The third one, which I think this is the time when someone in the writer's room was just like, it. You know, they were like, okay, we need to put this thing together, and we've already done this twice now. This one's the big clincher, was Bond, right after he investigates the Disco Volante, which, by the way, means flying saucer in Italian.
Okay.
After he investigates the Disco Volante, and, you know, they throw all those grenades and everything, and he goes to shore, he just conveniently so happens to get picked up by a Spectre agent.
He goes to hitchhike, and it just so happens to be Fiona. And it's like, okay, sure. Like, you know, it's like a horror movie where they get into the car and it turns out that that's one of the serial killers.
But there's so many conveniences in this movie.
Well, this is as far as I go.
Yes, me too. This is my hotel.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, so convenient.
Oh, how convenient.
Well, how convenient. And it's almost like the writers literally wrote that in there because they knew, this is very convenient.
But then once T walks in and he's like, whose luggage is this? And then she's in the tub and she's like, I thought you were in the wrong room. And
I had no idea that we were next door neighbors.
Oh, they just moved me down this afternoon. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Almost as if...
As if it was intended.
Yeah.
That works. That's perfect because that's Bond doing his provoking thing, his provocation thing, where he's speaking the quiet part out loud, which he always does with bad guys. He makes it known. He says just enough to be like, I'm your adversary, without really coming out and saying it. So that line works. But before that, him getting into her car and her pulling up to the hotel is like a little too convenient, unless she knew where he was staying and she pulled up to that hotel. But then why was she driving along the road? Did she like know that Bond had just had an assault on the yacht and that he was, you know, like, that's what I mean, where it's like, don't think too deeply into this and you'll enjoy it. But if you start thinking about it a little too much, it's like, it's at the bottom of the list. Who knows where these shortcuts came in? Maybe the original script was really long and they're like, it, Bond just so happens to be at the spa or whatever. But they could have injected a little more intrigue. You could have easily just started off with this weird mystery of double Dervals, right? Somebody saw this guy dead and then they saw him alive, and then this gets reported to the authorities, and then the briefing that Bond receives is like, I need you to look into this pilot. Well, what's so important about one pilot? Well, this pilot is alive and dead. What do you mean? Brief Bond about this mission regarding this dead body of a guy who should be alive. You can set up that intrigue without Bond being in the middle of it, and then have him investigate. Because again, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a NATO pilot. All these guys have top clearance and all that. So he's a VIP within the military. And then they find the sister connection, and then maybe he goes to investigate, right? In the same way, and I'll say this, Dr. No is first and foremost a murder mystery. We talked about that episode 1. The whole toppling rockets thing is kind of secondary and who cares ultimately. Bond is called in on a murder mystery. And so if you draw a comparison on those lines, that they're both kind of these murder mystery plots, Dr. No's makes so much more sense and doesn't cut corners and all that bullshit. Bond shows up in Jamaica and has to put clues together and seek out leads and everything. Whereas with this, they just went lazy with it. I think what ultimately would have made more sense, have somebody other than Bond, have it be the masseuse, and she finds this dead body, and it's like, hey, Bond, go investigate this dead body found at this spa. Bond says, why? What's so important about this one dead body? M says, well, it belongs to one of the pilots who was on the Vulcan training mission. Oh, that's really interesting. How could the pilot be on the mission and be dead at the same time? Great opener. Then Largo kills Domino as a loose end. And then because they happen to find the dead body of Derval, they then put together, wait a second, these two siblings happen to die at the same time. It's kind of like Saving Private Ryan, where it just like triggers this like, wait, how did these two siblings die at the same time? And this guy happens to be the pilot of the ship that had the atomic weapons. And then that sends Bond to Nassau to solve who killed her and why. Now, that means that he can't f*** her. So that's where the producers go, and then they just introduce another chick. Like, she had a twin sister that Bond can have sex with or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
yeah. But in the meantime, we have a more intriguing plot that makes more sense.
The thing about the Spectre Ring, I think the layman or somebody who's just getting into these movies might say is like, that's so stupid. Why would you put a fucking squid ring on? Wouldn't that just tell you that you're part of Spectre? But in my mind, I think what the filmmakers and the writers are thinking is more like, no, that's kind of like a call sign, like a secret symbol, much like much like the Masons would wear rings or something. You know, oh, you're a Mason. Oh, you're a part of Spectre.
For sure. But why did they make him the size of Super Bowl ring?
That's yeah. That is
like
true.
Why is it so blatantly obvious?
And when did you find out?
Well, you're wearing the same ring as Largo.
It's a ring I like to wear.
Vanity has its dangers.
For a super secret evil organization.
Like, Scott, I get that, but I think Bond already knows what Spectre is, and like we've kind of already established
on that note, though,
a thing.
Why,
you know what I mean?
Why not give Count Lippy a ring as opposed to a random tattoo?
Yeah.
It's a red box with a
he
spike
has the
through
tongue.
it. Why does he have that and not a Spectre ring? Because a Spectre ring... Like, nowadays, they would do that. Nowadays, they'd be like, that's got to be a Spectre ring because the audience knows what that is.
I'll tell you why.
Why do that?
I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
I know why. I'll tell you why.
Fucking go.
I just want to keep doing that. So I think the reason is because when they came up again with the idea of Spectre, going back to Kevin McClory and talking about that for a bit, one of the problems with this whole fucking lawsuit is who comes up with Ernest Blofeld? Who came up with Spectre? There's evidence to suggest...
Ian was high as Kevin was drunk as shit. The other guy was like tripping on acid. Ideas were being thrown around like mad. It's impossible to part. I came up with that. No, I came up with that.
Okay.
No, you like
so there's evidence to suggest that Fleming came up with Spectre and Ernest Blofeld, and I think Kevin's like, no, I came up with that. But regardless of that, in the books and in the stories, the idea was that Spectre was a culmination of ex-SMERSH members.
Is that what you chaps and SMERSH call each other? SMERSH? Of course. Spectre.
Again, we talked about SMERSH being part about Fiona, which was Death to Spies, which was the Russian organization.
Schmiertspionem.
Death to Spies.
Death to Spies. It was the part of that organization, and it was a Spectre, in the books at least, was the idea that it was a group of different people from ex-organizations, like either from the Mafia or whatever, and they all come together to form Spectre. So the fact that he has like a towel symbol on him may indicate that, oh, he was part of another organization at one point, and that might have just something that carried over from the books, and they left it in the story, and it doesn't really get well explained in the movie. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, fuck the books. It doesn't make sense in the movie.
Yeah, you drink,
stupid.
McCurdy. You reference the books.
Yeah. Go ahead, drink.
Listen,
drink. Okay,
we have better water. No, fuck you, Charlie. It's got better water. It's got
bigger boobs.
Budget, bigger boobs. Fiona
Voluptuous.
Volpe? Is that right? How you say it? Volpe?
Fiona Volpe.
Volpe is Italian for fox, which is very fitting for that character because one, she's a redhead, like a fox.
Yeah.
Two, she's a hunter. You see her, she kills several people in this film, or tries to, or is hunting for Bond.
Don't let her make so much noise. Use the chloroform.
And she's crazy, like a fox.
But she also the great sex scene with the bars, and it's like I'm wild like a cage animal.
Yeah,
whatever she says. That whole scene.
You should be in a cage.
Yes, that whole scene is it's very much on the nose. She is a fox.
Bond never says, "My name is Bond." James Bond. He never says that in this movie. But Fiona, when they're laying in bed, she says...
Do you like wild things, Mr. Bond, James Bond?
She calls him Mr. Bond, James Bond. And I don't know if that's just because, clearly she read a Spectre dossier on him.
And he's
Right.
like, he always
Mr.
introduces
Bond,
himself
James
like this.
Bond.
We don't know why.
You know, but they clearly know about each other. Like, he sees the Spectre Ring, and apparently everybody in Spectre knows about Bond, but they can't do a goddamn thing about it.
Because he is Bond, and as an enemy of Spectre, should be killed.
But she calls him Mr. Bond, James Bond, and I was like, that's the most self-referential it has been so far. Right?
Yeah,
that's
but
the
I will
first
say
time that
this.
it's been a little meta.
I also want to add something because I mentioned it last time, and I said this whole thing with Pussy Galore turning good at the end of the film is going to come back in the next film. This is the scene I was talking about. Charlie, it might be one of your favorite lines in the film.
My dear girl, don't flatter yourself. What I did this evening was for king and country. You don't think it gave me any pleasure, do you?
What I did this evening was for king and country.
Always.
And I always feel like every time I watch that scene, I'm always like, no, that's the writers literally being like, oh, well, like Bond f***ed a girl into being a good guy, and like now he doesn't, you know, he tried, it didn't work. Let's point that out.
So she's the anti-Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
James Bond, who only has to make love to a woman, and she starts to hear heavenly choir singing. She repents and immediately returns to the side of right and virtue. But not this one.
She was such a great addition because she was the smarter villain of the two in the fact that she was like, you know, I know his weakness. It's me.
Yeah.
I'm his goddamn weakness.
That's true.
I'm going to show up looking sexy in a bathtub, tits out.
When the time is right, he will be killed.
I will kill him when it's convenient.
She's one of my favorite additions to this movie. And like one of the reasons I would say this movie has a plus on Dr. No is that I like her character throughout. She even like tells Largo, no, we can't kill him now because if we kill him now, like their agents are going to know.
If Bond had died last night as a result of your hastiness, his government would have known for certain the bombs are here.
So we can't kill him now, but we'll kill him then.
Let's talk about Largo then, because you're totally right so far as Largo is an idiot. He's a stupid asshole. Fiona is so much smarter than Largo. She should have been the baddie that lasted longer, and Largo should have died sooner.
Yeah.
Largo only continues to show how stupid he is throughout the movie, and that he should not be number two. He should have been the guy that was fried in the chair right away. Largo got in with a NATO pilot. He's the one who got in with Derval by way of Domino.
Where did you meet him?
In Capri. I was there with my brother, Francois.
He set up that connection, right? He sold out Derval to Lippy and to Fiona and set all that thing in motion. He should have immediately killed Domino. Domino is a loose end. She should have been thrown into the shark pool immediately, right? Instead, he keeps her around, and she is the only thing linking all of them to Derval, literally by blood. So he's an idiot for not killing her right away. And then when Bond shows up and just starts kind of poking his nose into everything, Largo's, whatever, his ego is like, well, I should just kill this guy. Even though killing Bond or killing anybody looking into this atomic bomb question, if they're an agent and they're killed, that immediately flags like, hey, send everybody to Nassau. There's probably something going on in Nassau. Again, like we talked about in the last 3 episodes, every bad guy keeps Bond alive for a specific reason. They all had their own reasons, but they kept them alive. Largo wasn't as smart as Goldfinger to figure out, hey, I should just kidnap Bond, or I should just detain him otherwise, or force him to tell his superiors, like, oh yeah, everything's fine in Nassau. Instead, he has the most half-assed assassin ever go sit in Bond's shower and wait for Bond to come in, and Bond easily bests him. And then when half-assed assassin guy goes to tell Largo, Largo's like, you idiot.
You let him get the better of you.
Largo's the f***ing idiot. He's the dumbass for trying to kill Bond in the first place and sending the shittiest assassin possible. What should have happened instead, to make Largo look not so f***ing stupid, is to have given those lines of Fiona's over to Largo and had Vargas or some other lieutenant of his go try to kill Bond or have a run-in with Bond that would lead to scraps or something where, like, you know, they almost fight to the death. And then that scene, Largo would be like, you idiot, if you kill Bond, you're just going to send in the authorities and then punish that bad guy by throwing him into the shark pool. And Largo isn't as much of a f***ing dumbass. I do really enjoy the shooting trap scene between Largo and Bond, but
it's not the golf scene.
Yeah. It's more because of Bond, because because Bond is being pure Bond who loves to provoke. He loves to be pushing the bad guy's buttons. It starts with the whole...
Yes, I thought I saw a Spectre at your shoulder.
All the way to that moment where he can't help himself. He's like, what's this, a shotgun? And then he just does the shoot from the hip, which is one of the coolest f***ing Bond moments ever.
Oh, yeah.
What could be easier?
Perhaps you'd call one for me.
Of course. Pull!
Seems terribly difficult. No, it isn't, is it?
Right before that, he also, when he grabs the gun, he pulls it away. He's like, this looks like it's fitted for a woman.
Yeah.
Just to mock him right away.
He's pointing out that he had just had a guest who was Fiona, who he knows is bad.
But tying it back in, he immediately says,
looks more fitting for a woman.
Do you know much about guns, Mr. Bond?
No, I know a little about women.
I've got holes. I've got holes in different area codes. Area codes.
Charlie, I know I'm on the fence here, but I'm going to defend this movie just a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
The last time I talked about Goldfinger, and I'll say this, Largo is no Goldfinger. Goldfinger is charismatic. He looks like a dimwit, but you underestimate him at every turn. Largo, not so much. Largo is kind of like by-the-book villain, right? I mean, for God's sakes, they give the man an eye patch. I don't even think they explain it. They're just like, he's got an eye patch. He's got to be a bad guy. But what I like about this movie, like, it's got better water, okay? Like, that's the one thing, is the action sequences in this movie are, I think, much, much better than they are in Dr. No. And to be honest, like, most of the movies is for entertainment value, not so much for substance. But I do think there's that film, the movie has that going for it. Again, like I said before, I really do like Fiona. I think she's a really great henchwoman for this film, and probably one of the better Bond villainists that kind of get overlooked, even better than, I mean, Honor Blackman's a great Bond girl, but I think as a villain, Fiona is a much better villain, of course. I think Largo in this movie, unlike Dr. No, he's much more active. Yes, he's stupid. Like, you guys agree. I agree. I get what you're coming from. Like, he doesn't make the best decisions, but I do think that he at least is active in his role where he's overseeing to making sure, okay, we got the nuclear weapons, they're coming in. And, you know, he's already planned this whole thing out. You never see Dr. No do any of this stuff. I mean, Dr. No is kind of just sitting in a chair with his metal hands.
So you're calling him a micromanager then?
Yeah, like, but
I think he just likes scuba diving.
But again, here's the thing, though. Here's the
thing, you know?
We talked about that last week with Goldfinger, and it worked. My argument was, so screen time equals better bad guy.
And I said that's not what I was
screen
saying.
Time, you say activity. I want my bad guy to do more. But for me, that doesn't change the fact, though. That doesn't change the fact that Largo just comes across as a f***ing dumbass. Yeah. Whereas Dr. No, the only mistake he made, I guess, was not fully electrifying the cell that he put Bond in.
Sure.
Bond just kind of immediately got out by what he like used his shoes or something. But otherwise, Dr. No, even when he's unseen, right?
Dr. No's performance is better.
He is kind of like the Blofeld of that movie so far as he is not seen as much as he's heard, and he's like that unknown bad guy. You don't see him, so it's kind of intriguing. Like, who is this guy? And there's more mystery there. Whereas it worked for Goldfinger, who was a more active bad guy, but he was charismatic, and he was this disgusting fat who Bond saw as nothing, and then at every turn he had a surprise for Bond, and that's where why we agreed that Goldfinger was at the top of the list because of Goldfinger himself.
Yes,
I don't think Largo saves this movie
agree.
in the same way, and I think Largo brings it down. And I don't think that Fiona is enough to raise it back up. I think Fiona is great, but I think Fiona, she should have been that omnipresent bad guy throughout. You know what I mean?
But I will say, I think what you're describing with Dr. No in this fact is I forget the actor's name already. I think his performance is definitely better than Largo's. And fun fact, Largo's performance is also dubbed. So that's like 3 movies.
I knew to look for it this time.
4 movies in a row, someone's dubbed.
Yeah. On the dubbing thing, though, I thought my impression was like much like it would be today. You have an actor come in, they perform, and then if they're going to be dubbed, you're going to pull them into your looping studio like this, and you're going to have them talking to a microphone. The fact that they just had... I mean, and I guess it's because everybody's been foreign, right?
Yeah.
Dr. No was his own voice because he's Canadian.
Is his name?
But everybody else, so we have Ursula Andress, who's, what is she?
She was dubbed?
but she's like Germanic or she's Swedish or something. Like she heavy accent. Gert Frobe, heavy accent. Now we have Largo, actor guy.
It's Adolf. I'll find his name. Hold on.
Adolfo. We had, I assume he had a heavy Italian accent or something.
Yes.
Like if you have a heavy accent, they don't give you voice lessons. They just say, F it. We'll
dub them. Yeah. I'm going to put up a very weak fight for you guys because I still maintain in my head that I think Thunderball is just a more entertaining movie than Dr. No.
And you bring it. You defend it.
No. Dr. No. It's, again, they were figuring shit out. And finally, they get the script to the movie that they really wanted to do originally. And that movie, they put everything into it. And even so much like all of the underwater sequences are really a good addition to the film. You know what? I even would say that the DB5 sequence in the movie, it's very brief, but I think in some ways it's better because you actually see a lot of it. In Goldfinger, it's in the dark. It's kind of hard to make out what's exactly going on to an extent. In this one, you actually kind of see the DB5 in action a little bit more. Obviously, there's a lot more gadgets. I mean, again, it's kind of that super spy versus spy argument we had the last time. So yeah, the films had evolved a little bit. And I can see your argument, Charlie. I can see you thinking, well, that's because they had more money. I mean, this movie spent $8 million. I think it was like $9 million. Way more than they spent on Goldfinger.
That's three times the budget.
They went like,
that's 9 times the Dr. No budget.
Yeah. So better budget.
But here's the thing. You have to admit, though, that where that money went to was purely spectacle. And that doesn't mean bad, because watching that underwater battle, it's like
awesome.
It's like watching the Civil War underwater. It's f***ing awesome, but it is purely spectacle. It doesn't add to the story. It adds to the, the cinematics. And I think wow.
You're right. And I'll say that, like, I agree with you, but I do think the spectacle factor of the film definitely adds a lot more to the movie that was missing from Dr. No. And yes, Dr. No, it's definitely a smaller film. It's a lot of people talking in rooms and, creeping around corners and, finding, investigating. But this film, you've got a lot more action scenes, a lot more Bond doing more things, whether he's trying to rescue his assistant who dies or, banging that hot chick in this movie. Damn. I'm not over her. She was just so gorgeous in this goddamn movie. She's like 2 pluses on this movie.
Which one?
Both of them. You know what? Damn it. Both of them.
Yeah, I agree. But which one are you talking about?
Definitely Fiona.
Yeah.
The bathroom, the bathtub scene. Oh, and then you know what? Domino's okay. But you know what really got me was the lady in the spa.
Behave yourself, Mr. Bond.
She's great. She's fantastic.
You put her above the rest?
She is far less than the other two.
Not the rest, but I think just the fact that you have those 2 hot women are far better than the women that they have in Dr. No.
Yeah, I want to try and support you, McCurdy.
Thanks, bud.
Budget doesn't make a better film. We obviously argued this in the last episode. Yeah, there's more action. The underwater scene, the boat chase, the car chases, but it all comes across very convoluted and rushed.
Are you talking about Dr. No or this movie?
This movie. I'm talking about the underwater fight scene at the end, which is obviously a large part of this budget conversation. It's convoluted as hell. It's just nuts. There's way too much happening. It's not structured at all. There's lobsters running around on the floor like, Jesus Christ, what's going on? Like even the fish have no idea.
So I thought you were going to support me, but then you just went the other way with it. But that's what
I'm trying to bring it. I'm trying to bring it full circle to my final point. My favorite part out of all of that is there's one point where 2 guys are fighting and a shark starts coming in, and they realize like, this, you're my friend. This shark. And they stop fighting. Totally. And they both focus on the shark like, here, take my spear gun, shoot it. I don't even care.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah. And they're like, all right, well, do we just go?
When Connery read the script, he realized, there's going to be sharks in this shit. We need to have a plexiglass system, which is what you will see in most films, is they'll use like some kind of plexiglass to prevent the actors from interacting with actual like live animals if they're on set. Connery knew this. He's like, we need to do this. Like we need to have, that's a really terrible Connery. But anyway, we need to have a plexiglass. So when they get on the set and there's a scene where the fucking
wait, it's not glass, it's glass.
Plexiglass. When they had a scene where Connery was on set with the fucking shark glass, and the fucking shark breaks the glass, Connery was like, oh shit, and he got the out of that pool.
Sorry, old chap. Better luck next time.
McCurdy, here's my support is I think what brings this movie so close to Dr. No, or ahead of it, is I personally think this is Sean Connery's best performance as Bond. From start to finish, from his own fight scene, fighting his own stunt double in the beginning. That's his stunt double.
Oh, that's his own
stunt double.
Okay, I didn't even know that.
In the beginning, looking back.
Oh, wow. I don't think that adds to it, though.
No, I'm not saying, but he fought, stepping up and doing the fight scene.
Yeah.
I think it was overall some of his best conversations, some of his best quippy lines throughout the movie. I can't say it's better than Goldfinger, but I think overall.
No, I don't think it's better. It's definitely not better than Goldfinger.
But I think what brings it down is the writing, the writer, the script, the side characters. They all seem very shallow. That's what I think brings the movie down. But overall, what brings it up for me is I think it's actually one of Connery's best performances as Bond.
Okay, I agree with that. I think the performance is great, but I do think, when people talk about good writing in a movie, there's many different things you can talk about. And yes, I think the plotting of this movie is kind of shit because there's a lot of, like we said before, it's a lot of inconvenience.
It's convoluted.
But what I do really, really like about this movie is that they became so comfortable with all the little quippy lines, because Charlie, for God's sakes, you love all the good, the good lines. Like, one of my favorites in the movie is when he kills Largo's henchman with the harpoon and they're sitting on the beach.
I think you got the point.
And that scene in itself, I think, is actually a pretty good scene. That's like a really great scene for Connery, and it's a really great scene for the woman who plays Domino, because, he has to tell her very uncomfortable news that it's like, hey, your brother died. That's a lot of big news to take. And the fact that the person that you've been sleeping around with killed him, that's also big news. But then on the third thing he has to say is like, listen, all that, I know you're upset, but look, there are a lot of people that could die. I need to know if these bombs are on that boat. I think that is one of the strongest scenes in the movie for his character as far as Connery's performance. And that's, I think that's also another reason why I think this movie's just slightly better than Dr. No. And slightly, because I cannot disagree with you about those plot conveniences, the inconveniences in this movie.
I mean, it's not just that, though. Sorry, Nance, just to respond to that real quick. It's not just the cutting the corners, because I can easily overlook that stuff. It more so has to do with, I think, overall, Dr. No, I appreciate its simplicity, and then this has this kind of like half-assed complexity to it. A lot of it does have to do with those plot shortcuts, but a lot of it has to do with Largo as well. And yes, Connery has a solid performance, but at this point, Bond is going to be Bond. He's had 3 movies to practice, and he kills it in this one. But I barely bring Bond's performance into any movie, honestly, because Bond is Bond. The whole character is the guy has fucking ice in his veins, and he's obsessed with completing his mission.
I disagree.
It's hard to that up, especially after he warmed up with 3 movies, and then he jumps into Thunderball, good to go.
Listen,
I more look at everything other than Bond, right?
That's
because
fair,
every movie I'm going to be like,
Bond's
Bond's performance is great. I'm gonna think that every movie. Let me throw one thing into that ring, though. Bond commits the heaviest sin that Bond can commit in this movie. McCurdy, you brought up how Fiona is the perfect anti-pussy galore. Bond's like, I f***ed you for king and country. And she's like, I f***ed you for Spectre, bitch. And he's like, what? And that's terrific. That's great.
Yeah.
Once again, the feminists have on the James Bond franchise because every woman is kick-ass. You can't find a weak bitch in the James Bond franchise. So feminists, be angry about that. Except for this movie. Because James Bond commits the highest sin that James Bond can commit. And what is that, you're wondering? How does Bond get women? Pure lust, pure attraction. But in this movie, Bond blackmails a woman to f*** him. That should never, ever be the case.
Somebody's gonna wish the day had never happened.
Oh, you wouldn't tell Dr. Wayne. Please, I'd lose my job.
Well, I suppose my silence could have a price.
You don't mean... Oh, no.
Oh, yeah?
She took that blackmail really well, though. She was like,
yes,
oh.
But last week, you guys said Bond spanking Dink was cringy, and I was like, come on, it's Bond being Bond.
Behave yourself, Mr. Bond.
This... where he blackmails a woman, coincidentally another masseuse, he blackmails her into f***ing him because he's basically threatening to get her fired.
Please, I'd lose my job.
Bond should never, ever do that. It's genuine desire that brings women into his lusty trap, right? Instead, he's like, oh, somebody's going to pay for this. And he's obviously talking about Count Lippy. And she's like, oh, no, I could lose my job. And he's like, well, then my cock, bitch. And she's like, okay. And then immediately he's like, okay, thanks, idiot.
See you later.
See you later.
Alligator.
Which I laugh my ass off every time, but that is so anti-Bond, it makes me want to puke.
I wrote down in the notes as I was watching this movie, like, Dink was one thing, not to keep bringing Dink up, but that's one thing.
Dink brings me up.
Another level. But even before the whole blackmail scene, I don't know if she's a masseuse or a nurse or what. The whole complex was confusing. But he does the arm thing to like trap her, and she's like, no. And then later on, he pushes further with the whole blackmail thing.
But it's all well and good that he's coming on to her. I mean, like, because he's coming on to her. That's what, Bond is all about. Dr. No means no. He is always pushing that, but he always does it in a playfully charming way, even if the woman plays hard to get, because Bond loves the chase. But here, it doesn't come across as playful. It straight up reads like, do this or else, because they never have that moment where she seems into him. In fact, it's the opposite, and then it just turns. He knows that women want
very
him.
rapey.
He knows this. So Bond can be as rapey as he wants, because ultimately chicks are like, yeah, you were right the whole time. I do want to bang you. That's not us. That's not men in general. That's James fucking Bond. So much so that James fucking Bond doesn't need to blackmail women into sleeping with him. That's where I go, I'm offended. I'm deeply offended. I'm deeply offended. And not for her sake, for Bond's sake. That smears Bond horribly. That is a stain on his record.
That's a tough argument.
All right.
2021.
That's
man talk.
We never mentioned Q Scene in this movie, and I just think it has one of the best moments in the movie is when he says he gives him the pill.
A recently developed harmless radioactive device.
Harmless?
Which sends out a homing signal to a special receiver.
What am I supposed to do with this?
Well, obviously, you swallow it.
Now?
You have to appreciate that the producers and Terence Young saw what Guy Hamilton did with Q and said, this has to be what we do for eternity, right?
Yeah.
Like, once again, minute one, he's just like, oh, hey, Q. And Q's like, I know, I hate you too, asshole, but, like, we gotta be here.
Oh, no.
007.
What a wonderful surprise.
Well, for me, too.
Bond might as well be sitting there, and Q's like, hey, I have this gadget for you. And Bond's like, hey, I have this gadget for you. And Q's like, Bond, stop repeating what I say. Bond, stop repeating what I say. That's the kind of feeling that they have. And it's fun. It's always fun. And it was Guy Hamilton that had to come in and be like, these Q scenes are boring. Let's throw a little bit of conflict in there.
Let's spice them up a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like Goldfinger started at that. They started to try to
That's
create
why I say Guy Hamilton.
Guy Hamilton, director of Goldfinger.
Between Q and Bond, but this film, I think they finally got it down. That whole Q's just gonna treat Bond like a child and an idiot the whole time they're talking.
One where Q is like, oh my god, this guy.
Off. This comes back to the convenience of the overall plot. There's too many convenient points. Starting off, one you didn't mention, McCurdy, right at the beginning, JB, what's his name? Bouchard. Bond makes the point that he notices she opened her own door. You know, a woman at a funeral isn't going to open her own door. And that's where he makes the point like, oh, that's him. I'm going to go kill him.
Madame, I've come to offer my sincere condolences.
How is there a jetpack conveniently placed on top of his house for escape? Why is that there?
I can actually explain that. Scott, that is something I can actually explain. With the jetpack, which I do want to bring up, that jetpack's real. That is a real jetpack. That thing actually works. That's not a fake thing. That was real. I had a
works
long argument
as
with
in
an old...
it shoots gas out of it. It can't actually propel you up.
Yeah, there's no way
it does. Charlie, it actually propels you up.
It can actually propel a 200-pound man into the sky.
Where's the proof of
wearing
this?
those jetpacks would fly into like football stadiums and stuff. That's a real thing.
It's lined with fucking aluminum foil. How the hell does it actually work?
It's not. It works. This actually works. And when you think of jetpack, okay, like if you guys know about jet engines or whatever, we're not talking about jets, but yeah, it's compressed, like hydrogen gas or whatever it is. Not hydrogen. I don't know exactly. I don't know the science of it. It's compressed gas, but yes, it does propel people. It's not very long. It's not like Rocketeer stuff.
But wait.
No.
This is a movie prop. Are you saying the movie prop can do it?
You can argue with me about like, no, there's no way. Like, yes, it's a real thing. They've used it at Super Bowls. It was used as like, it's used at big events all the time as like, oh God, look up on YouTube. There's tons of videos of these jetpacks being used. It's not like a fake thing. It's more of a novelty.
Okay.
It was developed by the military.
Jetpacks can be a real thing.
Yeah.
This in
they
the
call
movie,
it a rocket belt. So to be fair,
in the movie,
the actual
though,
name
in
is
the movie.
Is
this a movie prop or is this a working jetpack that I could put on and shoot into the air?
It is a working thing called a rocket belt. Look up rocket belt. It's a working
when that
thing.
guy flies though, when the stuntman wears it and flies, that's real.
That is real. When you see him jump off and do that whole thing, that's real.
No shit.
Now, of course, when they do the close-up of Connery, that's a close-up, and they do that's a rear project, exactly. But that's a real thing that he's actually flying over and he lands. And then they do the cowboy switcheroo, and it's Connery putting the prop version of it into the back of the Aston Martin.
Okay, so we got that. Now tell Scott why the jetpack
Scott, the
was
reason
there.
why it's not an inconvenience is because if you remember, it's
not
like,
inconvenience. It's incredibly
easy enough
convenient.
To realize.
It's too convenient.
Here's hold on. If he can go from the ground to
but why is it there? He didn't know. He thought he was dead. He was at his funeral.
He put it there.
He planned it. He knew he wasn't dead, but he made the point. You shouldn't have opened your door yourself. That's what gave you away. He thought he was actually dead.
No, Scott. He leaves the funeral. Bond follows him. He goes to his house. He gets on the jetpack. He flies up. He puts the jetpack down. He goes into the house.
So loud.
Sits there and waits
How did
for
nobody
him.
hear him flying onto the roof of the house? That's the point I'm making. It doesn't make much sense.
If you want to talk about loud,
before.
Okay, that's fair. But you want to talk about loud?
I would say I think he had the French agent plant it.
Maybe so.
And that could be it
get
too.
in the getaway
Fair enough.
car.
That could be it too.
Yeah.
But the other, if you
because
want to talk
why
about
else
loud
would she
shit,
be there? What other purpose does she serve to just be sitting in the Aston Martin DB5 the whole time? Instead, my assumption is they got there together. Bond said, hey, I'm going to sneak in. You sneak in through the top. You put the jetpack there. You come back down. You get in the DB5. I'm going to fly over. You're going to help me load it up. And then when they come in and shoot at us, I'm going to put up the thing. And then we're going to shoot them with water. And then we're going to go
I'm okay with either of those explanations. The other loud thing that bothers me in the movie is when he's at Largo's compound and he already goes in the basement and then he gets out of the basement and it's like the cellar door. And if you watch it, he walks out of the cellar door
and
that
slams it. He slams the shit out of it. Yeah.
And there's a bunch of Batman's. You
Yeah.
have a bunch of these Batman 66 henchmen wearing all black, like walking around with guns trying to be like,
yeah.
where's this dude at? Where's
But
this
like,
dude at? And it's
like that's
how do they
that's
not
like,
hear him?
Those are just mistakes.
Yeah,
Like those are just
overlooked.
mistakes. Like
It's just a
we
thing.
won't count that against the movie.
No.
Goldfinger had goofy stuff, right? It didn't necessarily have stupid stuff. Goofy and stupid are related, but they're not the same thing. Goofy is stupid that's fun and still makes sense. Stupid is just stupid. And there are certain things in this movie that, again, if you don't think about it too much and you just love Bond like we all do, you just go along with it. But some of the things I noted was like the bad guy hiding in Angelo's room, right, was Count Lippy. And it's like this red herring where it's like, here's Count Lippy. But then a guy attacks through the window. And it's like, why did a guy attack through the window? Like, was he called there? Was he just there? Like, was he waiting for Bond to get on the phone? I get that they didn't have Count Lippy do it because then they could have a scene where Count Lippy tries to kill Bond, but then Fiona kills Count Lippy. But like, why didn't they let Count Lippy kill Bond first and then have Fiona kill Lippy? And then why does Fiona then just dump her entire motorcycle into a random lake? And then what does she like call a cab? Does she like walk home? Like certain things where it's just like, I guess that makes sense, but it doesn't. And then even nitpicking stuff. Like I want to go home with Domino, right? I want to have Domino take me in her boat to the shore. So, hey, my assistant girl, keep turning this key. But then Bond goes and unplugs the motor And then he's like, the motor's not working, but like, just say the motor's not working.
That scene is so cheesy.
Fiona's death, she's like, hey, Bond, why don't you come with us? And it's like, just usher Bond out. Have those guys usher Bond out. Or maybe Bond's going to fight them or make a scene.
So why does she have to go
walk up and like shoot him in the head? But instead, they have that slow pistol that's just going to fire into a crowd. Right, it's just gonna fire into a crowd of people, and then if you don't think about it that hard, all of us are Bond fans, so we'll give Bond a pass on its stupid stuff, and we just laugh at it and enjoy ourselves. But if you do hold it to those points, this movie just slowly starts to drift below Dr. No, where Dr. No doesn't have all that shit. I mean, even the Three Blind Mice, which is like, we pointed out how ridiculous it is, we're still like, but f it. They still triumph in the end. You know what I mean?
Charlie, you could say this movie sinks to the bottom.
You could.
But Charlie,
out,
you did
McCurdy,
say...
leave.
So you did say like I actually wrote that down, the Fiona, how she dies, because that whole sequence, right? The beginning of the sequence, again, it's another convenience thing. It's not a big plot convenience, but it's a little like, how does Bond get out of this sequence? And in other films, Bond uses his intelligence to figure out how to get out of things by his surroundings. But it just so happens in the sequence, a drunk comes up with alcohol and she just so happens to be smoking a cigarette. So what does Bond do? He breaks the glass and creates a distraction. But, like, it's just like the writers trying to come up with an idea, like, like, if it were another movie...
Why is the guy so insistent?
Get out of here! Can't harm you, man!
Drink my booze!
Yeah. And when we get that scene you were talking about with the gun and how stupid it is, I think it's a convenience thing where it's like Bond swishes her in the way to make her a human shield just at the right moment. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. In a movie with $9 million, couldn't you have come up with a better idea than just a gun that comes up from a curtain? Like, I get it that we go, oh, gun, bad thing. But this is James Bond. Can't they do something a little more fun than just a gun? Like, can't they have like somebody with a poison needle that's gonna prick Bond, and and Bond turns her into the needle? Like,
that would have been great. Yeah,
that's a little more spy-esque than firing a gun that doesn't even have a silencer into a crowd.
And that moment was so drawn out. Just
they do it.
Gun sitting, gun, drums, gun, drums.
The guy's literally waiting for the drums to finish.
Drums.
Hold on, and a little nerd fact. So the title of the club that he goes into is called the Kiss Kiss Club. So there was an Italian journalist, a critic, who basically had called James Bond Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And the title song for this movie was originally going to be called Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang until... they got their heads out of their asses and they were like, wait a minute, why would we do that? Let's do a song called Thunderball, which I think is a great song, by the way. So instead they put it in the movie as, I think it's the Kiss Kiss Club, but that's in reference to what this critic said about James Bond, calling him Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Well, McCurdy's already stole my fire for my music point.
You're welcome. But
I might as well continue into this portion.
I love the music
ranking
in this movie.
Songs.
Well, yeah,
I like the music.
At this point, we have 3 movies that all have a classically sung title song, right?
Yeah.
Because Dr. No
it's the title's theme. Yeah.
We have From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and now Thunderball. The name of the song, they're all the title, they're all titular, whatever the you want to call it. Go ahead. Which one is the best classically sung and why?
Well, I'm going to continue from McCurdy's point. They originally wrote the song Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and 2 weeks before the release of the movie, the whole team decided, well, no, we follow this title sequence, songs being focused towards the title sequence name. We got to rewrite it. Scratch that song. That song later came out, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but did not release at that point in time. This song, Thunderball, obviously written and composed by our favorite guy, John Barry, was sang by Tom Jones. Tom Jones was another one, a point I didn't make last week and obviously didn't fit to this film. Frank Sinatra actually said that Matt Monroe had the best voice of his generation. Frank fucking Sinatra himself said that. That's what makes this comparison to From Russia with Love hard for me. Well, actually, I wound up conceding to Goldfinger being number 1, but this song out of the 4 is by far my favorite. Thunderball is number 1.
Okay.
My favorite point to that is that Tom Jones, it's actually documented when he was recording this song, he hit that final note so hard and with so much passion, he nearly passed out.
So he strikes like thunder.
It was actually recorded that he closed his eyes to hit the song and he held the note for so long that when he opened his eyes, the room was spinning and he had to hold on to the audio recording wall. And he said, I nearly passed out because they said, awesome. Destroy that last note. Yeah. And Tom Jones is personally for me, I've always loved Tom Jones. He's such an iconic, such a huge voice, such a
You got to take a drink. You have to take a drink.
I said iconic.
Well,
but I'm going to add to Scott and say that if I had another reason why I think this movie's better than Dr. No.
This song.
I'll say better music overall. Music. I love this.
Bigger notes.
Bigger notes. Love the music. I love, but
more words. More words.
Yeah. But literally, here's what's funny.
No, but that aside, though, I love the score specifically of this movie to the other films. I think this is one of the better scores in all the James Bond films, even if the movie doesn't live up to it.
I like the underwater stuff, for sure.
I love it. I love listening to it. Yeah. I could listen to it for hours. I love it.
Here's the funny part is because they had to switch so quickly within 2 weeks of the film release, Barry was quoted as saying, I don't think anybody really analyzed what the hell he was singing about. And I still don't know what the song is about to this day. But we were given that problem and we had to live with it. And in 2 weeks, they still made a song that was that goddamn good. That's why it's number 1.
If you listen to the lyrics, it's like something like he's like a thunderball. But like, what is a thunderball?
Yeah, they're like, wow. Let's go with it.
You just gave a Y for Thunderball. Give a little bit of credit to Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. Just give a little why they're good so we can properly compare all three.
All right, well, starting from the bottom, Dr. No, as of current, was just a bit of a cluster. Obviously, it goes from the original composure of the Bond theme as we know it to the Calypso dance theme crap to Three Blind Mice. It just, they didn't have it down. From Russia with Love is in third as of current. If they would have nailed it and put it at the start of the film instead of the end, I still think that the film, you got to look at the song as it's put in the film with how we're ranking them personally, not just the song itself. Because Matt Monroe has a special place in my heart, and as I just referenced, Frank Sinatra actually is quoted as saying he's the best voice of our time.
Yeah.
And that's batting. That's, you know, if you're gonna get a compliment from anybody, Blue Eyes. That's the top. So is into, again, a brilliant song, but it didn't have that Bond feel yet. I think that's the issue too from Russia with Love. It did not have that Bond feel. It didn't have the large composure as McCurdy said, you know, with the actual Bond theme and the highs and the orchestra and the power of it. It was simplistic, it was beautiful, but it's not a Bond song. It's not, it doesn't feel like a Bond song. And then we come to Goldfinger, Shirley Bassey. Obviously, as far as anybody goes, but outside of John Barry, Shirley Bassey is the next most iconic Bond artist. As we will find, oh, God damn it.
I'll drink to that too.
Goldfinger, I think, is where they first figured out that, all right, the power of a song and an artist with the background images and doing it right at the beginning of the film with a proper orchestra, big notes, big sound.
Essentially realizing the connection between a title sequence and a song to ramp up that title sequence.
Yeah.
Right? Which I'll throw in a side note, this is the first time we have completely naked ladies, which we'll have for the rest of eternity, Bond-wise. And it was all thanks to the, I don't know, some PA forgot the bathing suits that day, so they were like, whatever, no bathing suits, just naked women with their titties flopping all over the place. So,
but to wrap it up,
Maurice Bender. Again, it's the same guy who did the other. Yeah, he's done the last two. Again, I think this time he said, "F it, let's."
Women have slowly been losing their clothing until now.
Out.
They're like, swim naked.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna see. We're gonna light you so nobody sees.
So,
but you can see.
But to wrap it up, just real quick, the music point. Thunderball is number one. And with its backstory and the fact that they created that song in under 2 weeks, it's the biggest song, best artist, it's the best vocal, best orchestral backing, as McCurdy mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm doing my thing here, but it is. It's the best executed Bond song to this point.
I just want to play devil's advocate a little bit here and I guess support McCurdy and Thunderball as a whole. It's hard to put aside and overlook the continuity issues, the plot conveniences, and the various other problems with this movie. But I feel like it was so close. And if they just reeled it in just a little bit, I think it could have been the best one so far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, it's another atomic bomb thing, just like Goldfinger was. I preferred this one because, they're stealing a jet. Sure, it's got the plot convenience of the guy invites him into the co-pilot seat for the better view.
Commandant, would you care to change places with the co-pilot? Better view up here. I'll be delighted to.
They're flying with live ordnance during a training mission.
Obianasa, NATO training flight.
She is armed, isn't she?
2 atomic weapons, sir.
That doesn't make sense to me, but I still like it. It's cool. Yeah. I love the location. I'm glad we're back in the Caribbean. We got some gambling. We get a little bit of the DB5. So I feel like they figured out the whole James Bond package and they just went overboard. They just were like, let's go as big as possible. We have all the money in the world to do it. Let's go massive. They just went too big.
I get that. And again, I told you guys I wasn't going to put as big of a fight as I think with Goldfinger over from Russia. But God, I think I enjoy this movie more. And every time I watch it, I was like sitting there just thinking, why does this movie suck? Like that was my reaction.
Again, if you don't think about it that much, if you don't think about
it's not a bad
all the
movie.
little things, it's good. But to follow what Nance is saying, the money for this went into the spectacle. And it's good spectacle. Again, it's like watching the Civil War underwater. It's kick-ass. But the money went into the spectacle. and whereas with Dr. No, they didn't have spectacle money. They had story money. So there was more of a focus on story. Whereas with this, there was more of a focus on spectacle. Not a bad thing, but if you ask me which one is better, I'm going to go with the one that ranks higher so far as like it's got that better batting average of like logic behind it. And they're both directed by Terence Young.
Yes.
And you get the feeling, because again, we did Terence Young, Guy Hamilton, Terence Young.
This is Terence Young's last movie that he does of the Bond franchise.
And you get the feeling as you're watching it that, I mean, literally, like the feeling, like it feels like you're watching Dr. No again. And I know he did From Russia with Love, but it feels just in the way it looks. I don't know if he carries the same cinematographer around with him, but it looks like Dr. No, but it just doesn't have the completeness that Dr. No has. Yeah. And it's like the emphasis was taken away from that simple story and was pushed towards spectacle. Thunderball could have pulled it off if it had just anchored its spectacle in a more interesting and intriguing story. Plenty of modern movies make the same mistake where it's like they spent most of their days and their budget on spectacle and they let the story slowly slip away because they're worried about the fucking trailer, that they need to get asses in seats. How do we bring everybody back to the theater? It's got this incredible underwater stuff, which is incredible, but if you're outside of the zone of like, it's wildly impressive that they managed to do that, you're like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a. It's slow and boring.
It's hard to some of it is hard to understand, and it is. Wait, what's going on? Like if you're not paying attention, especially when you're trying to follow a movie by most audiences follow a movie by dialogue. They don't follow movies. Even though that filmmakers love following movies by visuals, most people I think follow movies by dialogue, and those sequences are very long, and there is not a lot of dialogue. And I do think that the fight sequence, which I call the commando sequence, which again, you will find as a trope in the Bond films. That'll come back. The commando sequence. It's the third act of the film. We got to bring all these dudes in. They got to fight the bad guys.
And it's badass.
It's awesome.
They all drop from airplanes. Bond
it's cool.
Bond's like, scramble all the motherfuckers. We're gonna go fight, and everybody just jumps out of the plane. They're like, let's go! Like it is badass,
and that's cool. But like, and the only
Yeah.
thing to keep that scene momentum is John Barry's score, which again, like I said before, and Scott made that point, is the orchestra and that score for Thunderball is really great. So it like at least keeps the pace up, and you're like, okay, I'm following along. Bond's
drops out as soon as they hit the water. It's like the score goes away, and it's mostly quiet.
It's all water and all that stuff. But I love how
quiet.
Bond comes in and he's basically f***ing Superman, Aquaman. It's like, well, why didn't you give all of your guys that, jetpack, the water pack thing underwater?
Shot yellow out of it for some reason.
Yeah. Does anybody know why the yellow?
I think maybe as a trail or just like a smoke screen, maybe. I don't know.
I'm always gonna say it. I'm gonna say it every episode. I love every Bond movie. I really do. But if I'm putting these up against each other, I'm gonna put Thunderball at the bottom of the list because it suffers just enough story-wise and has a bad guy.
I'm gonna go out of character and actually agree with Charlie for once. That this watching.
Cheers to this.
Holy shit.
Please, cheers to that.
Watching this film, I was fighting myself the whole time. Like, is this better than Dr. No, or is it worse? I knew it wasn't anywhere near From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, as we stated. Just far better films, better performance, better. More water.
More water.
Dr. No has that subtle brilliance, and it comes back to kind of like Charlie said. Yes, it had a smaller budget, but to create a movie as well as they did, and the first Bond film as well as they did, without having a structure. They had a structure for this one. Obviously, they'd had 3 previous films, and it just wasn't better executed than the 2 previous films. Dr. No created such a better, as Charlie referenced, mystery, kind of, proper spy mystery at a smaller budget, but it still was of such a brilliant film that, to knowing what budget this film had, the money, where it went, the scenes and what they tried to do was just too much. I think they tried too hard at times, and it comes across.
Scott, I think that's where you and I agree. It sounds like McCurdy and Charlie loved the underwater stuff. Personally, I didn't. I'm not arguing
I did not
with
like it.
either of you guys that I agree that it belongs at the bottom of the list, but I just was wanting to put out there that I think it could have been the best if some of the edits Charlie already mentioned happened and cut down on some of the spectacle. So the parade scene could have been chopped down. The underwater fight, I don't think we needed that to go on for so long with like hundreds of people. For me, underwater fighting's boring because it's like slow-mo. There's only so much they can do with like shooting a spear gun, cutting someone's oxygen hose, ripping their mask off, which I guess completely incapacitates them, or stabbing.
By the way, the mask off scene, if you look closely, when Connery's mask gets taken off, he like looks for one of the henchmen's masks and he puts that one on.
And it's
then
the
next
same
shot,
one?
It's the same one?
Yeah,
so
totally.
I was going to say, Nance, which I think is really funny, and I'm going to concede. I'll say, I'm going to concede. I'll say Dr. No is better than Thunderball. What I am going to say is I think it's interesting you guys bring up these points, because when I went and looked at the critiques of this movie, one of the big things that comes out is, one, the underwater sequences sometimes seem a little incoherent, and there are a lot of them, and of course there's no dialogue, and you kind of you're wondering like, what's going, like, so what am I looking at? What's going on? And then the movie just takes a while to get there, right? Like Charlie, you were talking about how the beginning is so long. Like it's long in the fact that like From Russia with Love starts out where it's like, we're learning about the bad guys, and then Bond doesn't come in until 20 minutes in the movie. This movie, however, it's different because he's like conveniently there. But like as far as the overall plot goes, it takes a little while. Where the other movie, it's literally like, this Goldfinger guy, yeah, he's a bad dude. You should check him out. And then the movie's off the races, like right like that. Like we don't have to wait on any Spectre plot shit. It's just we're already into the movie.
I'll say this. McCurdy and I, as seasoned filmmakers, we look at the underwater stuff in awe of like, wow.
Yeah.
It's
good
hard
work.
shit.
But as a kid, and as some, and by kid, not to call you guys kids, but as like people outside of that,
peasants,
you just go, this is boring. Like as a kid, I didn't like Thunderball because I was like, the underwater stuff is boring.
Yeah.
It just takes too long. Now I'm wildly impressed by it, but outside of that realm, it's like, okay, it's impressive, but I don't give a f, right? Like, it's impressive, but as far as the story goes, as Sean Connery himself once said, I'm waiting to be impressed.
I'm waiting to be impressed.
Personally, I think you're a fucking idiot.
The list is as follows. Goldfinger maintains supremacy. From Russia with Love, number 2 spot. Dr. No, number 3. Thunderball, number 4.
Charlie, again,
Agreed.
to your point, like I said, I conceded, but we can agree that this movie is an example of how spectacle and putting a bigger budget can make a more entertaining movie, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that the script is going to be just as strong, because you're more like leaning on, oh, well, we've got these cool underwater effects. Oh, we got a jetpack in this movie. Oh, we have, these really great locations. And we can lean on that and just kind of let people just ignore, oh, don't look behind the curtain. Yes, we up here, but just watch the pretty water sequences.
Don't think about it too much. You know, hey, how about that underwater stuff? And for the record, I don't care that the budget was skewed. It means nothing to me that Dr. No was first and it managed to do all these things with a small amount of money. I don't care. If Thunderball came out first and Dr. No came out fourth, I would still rank them in this way. It is outside knowledge to me what the budget is. So it's something to note, but it doesn't weigh in for me at all. I do not care about that stuff. All I care about is that Dr. No is this better story with a better bad guy, and that Thunderball is exciting and cool. It's a really cool movie, but it's not as good of a story, and it has a bad guy. I think Dr. No just inches above it to where it belongs in third position.
I will also say Thunderball in the grand scheme, Thunderball's not a bad movie, but it's like you're saying, it's just as much as Goldfinger and From Russia's like this. I think Thunderball and Dr. No are kind of like this.
Yeah.
Now, do we have anybody we want to toast to tonight? And I'm going to suggest the enemy, or maybe the hero of this film, Kevin McClory, who actually does make a cameo appearance in this movie if you look very closely, which I believe Charlie will put in the
cutting
movie.
in right now.
We'll cut in.
He's dead?
He has passed away.
Okay, whether or not Kevin McClory came up with some we weren't there. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, even though he was literally a specter on the shoulder of the entire franchise, Kevin McClory may or may not have come through with some good-ass ideas that added to Bond lore. So as far as that goes, to Kevin McClory, is he friend? Is he foe? Maybe we'll never know, but that motherfucker is dead, so cheers to that guy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, if you liked this video, if you love the arguments, if you want better Bond, better arguments, better ranking, please like and subscribe down at the bottom. We'd appreciate it. Or check out these other videos that we've done in previous films. You might like some of them. You might not like some of them. I don't have anything else. I'm
like and subscribe, you
better co-villain, better car, better Q.
I want to hear why.
Let me add another point.
I don't want to hear
another point.
It has the DB5.
Let me add a point.
Lightsabers. It had more lightsabers, so it's better. I want to hear specifically why it's better.
Russia for Love. It has a better overall plot. Better villain.
That means, Scott, I'm saying that means nothing to me. I want you to tell me why. It had a better overall plot. It means nothing.
Then let me talk.
Then go.
Charlie, let me add this. From Russia with Love, the entire film takes a nosedive into the gypsy scene. If you were to analyze the whole
drive
movie as
up
a
to
whole,
Michigan and kill this.
If you're analyzing,
No.
speaking of Odd Job,
But Scott, you have to say why. Go into that. Why is Odd Job better? And not just because you used to use him to cheat in GoldenEye. Why is Odd Job better?
So many better scenes of that little smile. He doesn't need to say anything. There's no lines.
Scott will say, he'll say one thing and he'll say, this is better than this. He won't elaborate, and then I will elaborate.
No, I elaborate. All right.
I agree with Scott.
McCurdy decodes,
but I'm going to just elaborate why Scott is right.
Please listen back to the beginning of this.
Pussy Galore's better because it's right in her name. She's pussy. I like pussy is better
Every episode falls apart.
Tatiana!
It does.
Tatiana's not. What does that even mean? But pussy. Everybody likes pussy. Pussy galore!
Oh my God.
Ladies and
That means a lot of pussy.
It's unbelievable to me. It took so long to
Did we ever get a definitive answer from
Charlie?
Can we wrap this up? Can we?
I'm trying to wrap this up.